Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you ever so much for inviting me to chat with you today.
No, I'm honoured that you wanted to come on and talk. I know you're incredibly busy, and I know you're in the middle of quite a busy upheaval and re-establishing your roots. And how has that all gone?
Do you know what? It's been really amazing. So we moved from Brighton, like inner city, to the countryside in just a bit further along the coast in Sussex, just outside Arundel, about 2 months ago. And it's been amazing. We've gone from a little two-bed flat to a lovely house that's on a little farm, and we're currently just building some vegetable beds.
Oh, lovely. More space to roam.
Yeah, great for the dogs, the kids. I think just great for us to be in nature.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a thing that comes with age. I'm just for the simpler life. Like I can't
Yeah.
be bothered with the hustle and bustle. I've just decided it's not for me. I think I've been fighting that for quite a lot of my life. Just I think I like being next to nature. We're quite fortunate here. We're next to the sea. So I think if I wasn't next to green or water, I wouldn't be a very happy individual, probably.
Yeah. Dan, I'm really sorry. The dog's just opened the door and it's really windy, so I'm gonna
It's
just
all right.
all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I've had to lock Daisy inside actually because she's a needy puppy and she'd want to cuddle or to at least try to talk to you.
There we go.
I say talk to you literally. I'm convinced that she understands every word I say. I don't know
That's
whether that's
about
all.
dogs, isn't it?
Yeah, because I was always before I had my own dog. I was always one of these people like people kiss and cuddle their dogs. Like I get their pet. I totally get it now. She's my fur baby. She'll look.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have two now, right?
We've got two. One of them is like our fur baby, and she's wonderful. The other one is like a monster in a big body. Okay, and she's since we've moved here, she has ran so many times because she just bless her, she's just a beagle. She gets a scent and she
Um,
goes.
they're off.
So the tracker has been on 100% of the time.
How has like life been in general with the Switch? And I guess like if you don't mind me saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is was it a little bit of shooting for the simpler life for you as well?
100%. I think that when I moved from Guildford. I'd lived in Guildford for 10 years because I went to uni there. And then I wanted to move back to the sea. So that move initially was kind of to drive a little bit of the simpler life. And then obviously the prices of
Mm.
just living has gone up. And we didn't want to need to work as much if we didn't have to. So actually moving to the country has made it a little bit easier for us. We both found sometimes we were getting caught up in that, like you said, that hustle, that
Mm.
almost like we're all racing for something that we didn't really know what we were racing for. And
Mm.
actually, I think just taking ourselves away from that situation, we both really, it's allowed us to just do what we want to do and, give back a little bit to community and just have a bit more time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that perhaps we've spoken about, not recorded before, but I don't know whether you can resonate with your journey, but I can certainly resonate with my journey. And this phrase that sticks in my mind, especially within the fitness community and kind of culture on the broader scale, is confusing self-enlightenment with self-avoidance, or
Yes.
vice versa, confusing self-avoidance with self-enlightenment, and that a lot of us,
Yeah. Or bypassing.
yeah, human bypassing, I've heard it referred to. I think you've referred to it as that, and I just wonder whether because I've had certain different incarnations of that over the years where we've got this narrative that we tell ourselves we invest a bunch of time and energy into that, whether it's achieving academically, achieving professionally, or whatever it is. But I found it's like just been a very comfortable tool of numbing, which I think a lot of people can resonate with, whether it comes to food or it's what they do with their work or whatever pursuit they have. Is we've got this disembodied practice of just not being attuned with our true selves, I feel, these
And
days.
I think it's potentially something that's just learned from society as well. We're so molded, aren't we?
Mm.
From day one, our kids are put in shirts and ties and told to sit at a desk all day. And actually, that's probably not what they truly want to do. Their bodies want to move, they want to explore. And obviously, I'm not saying the education system isn't important, but I think we are being designed to put back into a capitalist society.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you look at the infrastructure hasn't changed in the last century, and I think even in terms of focal points and the mounting pressure they have on kids now. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Mita will come back now. She's only just turned 7, and it's the things that you have to remember. Remember a pound for this. Don't forget to do your homework. Don't forget to do your reading as well. Don't forget to bring your kit for this. But then, you know, arguably some of the more important life skills are totally missed. You
Mm.
know, like we do make a conscious effort to cook or at home, but that's not something that we really touch on there, or, you know,
Yeah.
why they might move their bodies and why that might be good for them, and why, you know, certain creative pursuits are good for their brains as well, social connection, all these other things. They don't really address that, but we're still learning about. I'm not saying history isn't important, but like history is a hugely important thing in schools, and, you know, arithmetic and algebra. And I mean, I don't know about you, I can't really remember the last time I used Pythagoras theorem, but I know I learned that at school. I can't remember a thing about it, but I know I
Yeah.
learned that at school.
Yeah, and I think maybe the way we as adults were, especially something that I struggled with, was like this concept of play. And
Mm.
you know, I grew up believing that the most important thing in my life was to do well at school and get a good career. And that is how my life path was dedicated to. And in no way do I blame my parents. They were wonderful. They did the best they could with the knowledge that they had. But I think, you know, being able to create some awareness, and that was partially because I've had the privilege of going to therapy and working with an amazing therapist, is that actually these things like play and rest pursuits are just so important. What's the point in us all pushing and striving for something if we don't have time, capacity, energy to experience joy and pleasure and enjoy ourselves?
I mean, you know, I often think about the influence of parents and the impact of that. If you had to go back, if it's not too personal to ask, it's obviously a bit of a generational thing, I think, that's passed down as well. Where do you think that kind of started for you? Did that start at primary school? Can you remember that period?
Yeah, I think sorry, my dog's having a right yawn. I think it probably started from competitive sport, I would say, when I was younger. And the aim of the sport, I was a gymnast, was to win. The
Mm.
aim was never to enjoy it. It was to win medals because, you know, I thought if I was good at something, that is the purpose. I have to be the best at something. And I think I was lucky to be academically gifted. And when you do well at school, I think you're very much praised. So when I was in senior school, I think I got 7 A stars and 3 A's at GCSE. And I was really disappointed because I didn't get all A stars. And
Mm.
if I look back at that now, I feel so sad for my like inner teenager, because somewhere along the line, I learned that my self-worth was linked to that achievement focus.
Did you feel that pressure at the time as well? Was that something at the forefront of your mind that I have to, you know, it has to be A stars or nothing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I felt that was what I'd been predicted. That was what I should get. I thought, what would happen if I didn't get it? Um, and you know, we laugh about it as a family now, but something that was said a lot was, if you don't work hard, you'll become a hairdresser, as if being a hairdresser was a really negative thing. And now, for example, my mum loves her hairdresser and she's a really important part of her life. But I think that just shows how we've all grown as a family and kind of as a culture as well, a little bit about, especially I think during lockdown, we realized actually the roles that people have in our lives are so hugely important, and that's nothing to do with academic qualifications.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you say about the lessons learned over the pandemic. I don't know whether that's true of everyone.
Yeah.
Just to give you a really horrible example, is I went to the gym the other day. A guy came out of a cubicle, just walked straight out the door, not washing his hands. Just, I'm not going to bother with that. You know, after a pandemic and all of that, I mean, that's pretty gross. But that's a really gross example. But I think some people, especially the ones I've spoken to, that were desperately trying to get back to life before the pandemic,
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
gone back to exactly this. And there's no judgment from me. It's just, I think, I don't know, I don't want to say a great opportunity to, because, you know, that comes with an element of privilege, because, you know, some people lost everything over
Yeah.
that period. So they were forced to make those changes. But I do think it's awfully sad to not reflect on that period and want to change anything, even if it's, you know, recognizing it's quite nice not to sit on a train for 2 hours to
Yeah.
work every day and 2 hours on the way back. And I think that's opened a lot of eyes,
Yeah.
people's eyes.
Yeah. And I think it's again about this is a desire for more free time, that our work should not dictate our whole life. And again, I say that from a place of privilege, because I know some people have to work a lot because from a financial position, because of the way our society is. But yeah, growing up believing I was my career, I think, yeah, the pandemic has certainly helped me to realize that there is more.
Yeah. And then obviously with your academic achievements, then was your physical striving for the next thing. What came after gymnastics at school for you? Because I know you've done various different things. If you don't mind me asking, I'm going to be really.
Yeah, of course. So after gymnastics, so I grew up as a gymnast and a dancer, and then I really enjoyed marathon running for a little bit. And then I went into, I think it was in, maybe when we first met. So how long ago is that? I was thinking maybe about 10 years ago.
That was, I
But
think we met 2012.
2012, so over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was I won't call what I did bodybuilding, bikini I did, but that era.
I don't even describe myself as a competitor. I describe myself as a participant of
Yes.
revealing. Because actually, when I reflect back on air quotations bodybuilding, I was never really invested in bodybuilding. It was about body revealing because I grew up in a much larger body as a teenager, and it was about putting those demons to rest. But that exacerbated a whole other
But,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I went down that route for a couple of years. And why I did it at my final year of my first degree as well, which probably wasn't sensible, being in a calorie deficit for that period of time. And then I just realized it wasn't for me. I didn't like being on stage. I didn't like being looked at. I didn't like the fake tan and the whole thing. Some people love it and that's great, but for me, it didn't work. I like the training side of it. And then I think as I was increasing my eating again, I was doing some strength training. And a coach had just started to work at my gym and saw me doing some leg training. I think I was doing squats, and they came over and said, had I considered to do powerlifting? So then I spent probably 3 or 4 years in powerlifting, and I did really well. I broke the British records. I won the European Championships, but I realized it was taking over a huge part of my life. Because again, I think when you have the capacity to push and when you know you're good at something, it does start to creep in.
Did you feel that was more so than the physique side of things?
Yeah, I think so, because because of the physique side of things, honestly, I wasn't as good at it because I didn't like it.
Yeah. I
So
wonder what your thoughts are now with everything you've learned. I know hindsight is a wonderful thing because I went through a period of essentially being judged on my appearance and being invisible or visible for all the wrong reasons growing up. And I thought, oh, I know what's going to make me feel better. Being objectified and stuck on stage and being center of attention, which I hate, posing, which I despise. And actually, like I can't figure out well, I do know why. I think there was this self-worth thing attached to appearance and this validation thing I was striving for. But it's interesting, obviously, with everything that you know now, is what lessons can you take from that period?
so I think certainly around placing self-worth and self-identity on one aspect of the self is never a good idea, because when that aspect is lost, you're left with nothing. So your self-worth just drops entirely. I think for me there was probably an element of being within the fitness industry, and I saw someone share this the other day on social media around it being almost like my body was my business card.
Yeah, it felt like a rite of passage at that time. It felt like that was the done thing to earn your stripes. Because I think about, what the individuals, because we came into industry around the same time, is the people that you aspire to be like, the authorities, the ones that had their voices heard professionally, they were getting half naked on stage as well. And yeah, it felt like the done thing.
Yeah, and obviously there is that belief that you think if other people see you in shape, whatever that shape means, that will sell. And
Mm.
actually, we know, having gone through that process, that that is, when you're on stage, you are not in any sort of healthy place at all, because you are dehydrated, you're probably way under your healthy set point. And that's, I think back now, that's not a role model that I want to, that's not a message I want to push out there in any way.
Yeah, but that's still like a prevalent message out there, isn't it? That's still the, I guess, the dominating theme around things. And I don't know whether that will change. I often think, has my echo chamber changed, or are things culturally shifting? I do think there are more voices that are
Yes.
accepting that actually there's more to this fitness and health thing than just your appearance, but it is still largely dominated by people that are, this is the be all and end all, and this cures my any mental health things that you have, or this is going to make you wealthier, more successful, and everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think that's like, it's referred to as, what's it called? It's called the halo effect. And it is a concept where if someone is in a body that we aspire to, we automatically have this impression that they are successful and everything in their life is perfect. And I think until we overcome, and it's a complete societal issue, like things like weight stigma, we're going to be stuck in, okay, people within the health and fitness industry should look this way.
Mm. And trustworthy as well. I think I read something similar along the lines that people that are objectively beautiful and have symmetrical features are more trustworthy in the perceptions of a lot of other people. So that's some, understandably, that's why people shoot for that quite often.
Yeah, because we believe that if we, yeah, fit into that body, people will believe that we are
Mm.
trustworthy, successful, safe to work with, all those types of things.
Yeah, and that's constantly reinforced as well, because you see the praise and the accolade that comes with that, the followers, the influencer deals, and it does confirm all those things that people suspect, that wealth and success come with it some of the time. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I can't see it changing, because it's a capitalist thing, isn't it? Arguably, it's built off diet culture and capitalism, and it ticks all the boxes in that regard.
Yeah. And I think it takes courage to step outside and just say, yeah, I know that could potentially lead to wealth and success and whatever else that I desire, but it feels wrong. And
Mm.
so I'm not pursue that path anymore.
Yeah, this is something that I feel like if anyone listens to these consistently, they get bored of me saying this, because it's something I discussed with Ella, the fitness psych. I don't know whether you're familiar with Ella.
Yes.
We was having
Yeah.
a discussion about the cost of congruence sometimes, and that, with your message, being at ease with that, and displaying this awareness of these things that are involved with health outside of that, it might have a cost to business, but then
Yeah.
you can sleep easier at night, and being at ease with that, which is a difficult pill to swallow, because I've seen quite often, at least some of the people and some of the messaging that I saw moving away from just the solely aesthetic side, is they perhaps weren't getting as much success with that. So they've 180 back on the previous message, because that is easy to sell, fat loss and body transformations and photo shoots. They are easy to sell, and people have bills to pay, they have mortgages to pay. I do get that, but I don't. I just can't. And I say this as someone I wouldn't call a business person, just someone
Yeah.
that's invested into doing the job. I'm not out here giving anyone business advice, but for me personally, I can't do that, and it is a little bit of cutting my nose off to spite my face sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'd probably be within completely in the same way, and that 10 years ago, that was probably my messaging, because that was my belief system. And I think it comes back to that self-avoidance and bypassing again, that I thought that that was right
Yeah.
until I started to delve into something feels a little bit off here. And I think, yeah, probably business did take a hit for a little while, but then you find your niche, and
Mm.
you find, I think when you work from a place that aligns with your morals, it just generally feels better. And I think people pick up on that.
Yeah, yeah, that more authentic representation of yourself comes through naturally without trying.
Yeah.
Some of the messaging is almost encouraging people to be an inauthentic version of someone else to be successful, but under the guise of authenticity. Which, I mean, when people talk about authenticity, it's often quite cruel, callous, polarized phrasing, tough love, and real talk. And I don't know whether that is truly being authentic because I can't. Well, maybe it's in my naivety. I can't fully believe that some people go out their way to be that mean sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a deeply flawed human. I'm not saying I'm any angel here, but some of the stuff that people say online about others are just. But
Yeah.
again, that's rewarded, isn't it? It's really strange. It
Yeah.
really the worst aspects of society.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's with anything. It's like the polars, aren't they? They're the voices that get heard the most because I think just people are interested.
Yeah, yeah. People like gossip. I don't know where that comes from. There must be some psychological explanation for that, but
Yeah,
we tend to latch on to gossip and drama and controversy.
yeah. I wonder whether it's back to like that dopamine hit,
Yeah, maybe. Because
basically.
we look at even television. I think things like Love Island, which have been like you watch what you want to watch, but it's been associated with you know people taking their own lives or death by suicide as it's better phrased, and objectification of people and glorifying the worst aspects and the sexualization of everything, but it's put on every year
Yeah,
still.
and
So
lots of people still watch it.
yeah, so we highlight and we can acknowledge the worst aspects of it, but because it's popular and there's money to be made and people talk about it, they still put it on.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wonder whether what that says about that a need that is missing in society for most people,
Mm.
for them to desire to need to watch those type of things to feel good or to feel calm or relaxed.
Yeah, does it make people feel better about their lives?
Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows?
Who knows? But with TV and social media, I just find it's got this thing about it almost dehumanizes people. We feel more at ease with it because we're experiencing the world 2D through a screen. Is we're not in any shape or form empathetic about what that person might be going through or why they're behaving in a certain way. It's just this is quite gritty. This is something to talk about the next day, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I think it is very hard to feel that, and I think that's probably one of the I like I'm a massive fan of social media. I think it's amazing for creating online community, but I think one of the things that we sometimes fail to do is differentiate between an online community and in person,
Mm.
because we cannot get the same connection, we cannot feel that same empathy or gratitude for people that we've never met and are in a space on a square as we can when we're meeting having a coffee with someone.
Yeah, totally. And I think when we talk about the well-being spectrum, is that emotional connection is such a
Mm.
neglected discussion, like actually true connection with people, not just digitally or for the sake of ulterior reasons sometimes, like social climbing or being associated with someone. If I might, get some of their followers if I comment on this and the kind of the social media politics, because I don't think the issue is social media. I just perhaps it's social media is being used to fulfill needs it was never designed to fulfill.
Yeah. But then you say that, but then I think now it's not something that I have loads of knowledge on, isn't something to do with the way all the algorithms work, that the more that you're on it, the more almost attention that you receive. So now we're almost reinforcing that actually this is I think there's been a Netflix on it actually, hasn't there? I haven't watched it. But I think people that used to work for
Oh, yeah, I think I can't remember what it's called, but it was quite terrifying. And
yeah,
also, everyone that was speaking about it doesn't let their children use it and they don't use it themselves.
yeah, which is really interesting, isn't it?
It is. How do you juggle that with work? Because you're someone that works with people remotely. Do you have a strict kind of how much I'm going to use it, how much time I'm going to invest in it, how much I'm going to communicate with people on off hours, that kind of thing?
Do you know what? I am not a huge user of social media anymore. It's something I previously did invest some time and energy in. Sorry, my dog is get down. Thank you. And it's not that it's. I think it can play a huge role in creating a bigger business. Um, but I guess that's not my priority right now.
Mm.
Um, I connect with my clients when I speak with them. So I have a policy with clients that I don't communicate with them over social media because they have my email.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
think that's a healthy approach.
yeah, and I think part of my business model is that I want to create an intimate, deep business rather than a big business.
Mm, yeah, I think similarly, actually. because I think even from, although, you know, my work's quite different from you, is I'd much rather more closely work collaboratively with a, you know, 20 individuals max kind of thing, rather than big scalable. And I think that's, you know, that's a message that's changed over the years, because it's all about scalability, it's all about streamlining, it's all about, you know, working with as many people as possible. I certainly think there's a place for, you know, I'd love for my message to reach more people, but I don't think that should be to the detriment of the people that I'm working with.
Yes, and I think sometimes that message gets diluted, doesn't it, a little bit, if you
Mm.
start expanding it perhaps more than you wanted to in the first place. And I think, again, I think it's that society message that if you're doing well, you can do better still.
Yeah,
Earning
constantly.
enough, you can still earn more, and that we should be striving to develop these huge, you know, business models and be taking people on and, you know, earning more money, helping more people. But what if what we do is enough?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, you know, on a deeper level, it's what, when are you enough? Because I think it's tied to self-worth for a lot of people. It's not just when is it enough, it's when do I feel enough? And because we constantly move those goalposts, it's, you know, as someone that has struggled with self-worth in the past, is I think that is something you associate with achieving, but not only achieving in terms of your own acknowledgement of your accomplishments, it's making sure that it's acknowledged by others, or, you know, if you were to tell someone else, they would be able to acknowledge it as well. Not necessarily something to brag about, but, you know, whether that's from pride or something that you could, you know, share and others would be impressed by that. I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, I think perhaps it's that same as that, as you were saying earlier, just this desperate human need for emotional connection, to be seen.
Mm,
You know, I think those, I was like 100% achievement focused, did one qualification, wanted the next one, was just me kind of just saying, hey, see me, like,
mm,
tell me I matter, tell me, you know,
mm,
because I needed that someone else to see that I was doing well. And
yeah,
I think when you do work and when you do grow your own self-worth, and it's a huge difference. But I think one of the things that really helped me was to develop a community, an in-person community that, you know, it didn't matter whether I failed at something, because I have this community that don't really care.
yeah, yeah,
You know, you have community confidence, or like it's that tribal thing, isn't it? You don't need as much personal confidence, because
mm,
you're never going to get thrown out the tribe for like getting an A instead of an A star.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. When did that realization creep in for you? When did you realize that? Because you know, just my own, I don't think I realized that till I was 30.
Well, do you know, I
The
think
20s
similar.
oblivious to that.
I think 30 probably, I think a lot happens at 30, doesn't it? I don't know whether it's the age, whether it's the brain maturity,
Mm,
but yeah, late 20s, 30, I think it took. And I think because of the way perhaps I was living, the way society pushes us to live, I would think I personally was like just rushing through life so much. And I never had time to think about these things.
yeah, just trying to get through. And I think a lot of people are there
Yeah.
is, as you say, they're not necessarily experience that daily joy. They're just getting by. They're just surviving. They're just on autopilot a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
that was my 20s largely. And it does take that pause of thought and that removal from everything around you. We talk about being present, but I don't know whether lots of people truly know what that is. Again, something that's taken a lot of practice for me, and I still find it quite challenging. I do
Yeah.
sometimes because you're always coerced and pulled to take your attention elsewhere. You know, which is removed from you and how you're feeling, how you're experiencing the world, and the way it manifests itself. It comes out in unhelpful ways sometimes, and I think unfortunately it's when it's got unhealthy or it's, you know, brought about something probably I won't share on here, but the less helpful side of things at least, and you're like, okay, something's up, but that's been bubbling away there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like just how it presents itself. Um,
Mm,
I think for me, learning about things like evolutionary theories, like polyvagal theory, window of tolerance theory, learning more about nervous system regulation, really interested in neuropsychology, those type of things have helped me to understand more about the connection between like the physical and the mind, and how actually when we are, like you said, present, connected, grounded, we feel very different and we experience very different sensations within our bodies than if we were in a very stressed, overwhelmed, like hyper aroused state, and we'd make very different decisions. So
Yeah.
I think for me, being able to recognize, well, hang on, like my thoughts are racing, my heart rate's increasing, I'm a little bit clammy, right? I'm in like what we would call like survival mode or hyper arousal. Let me just regulate myself and ground before I make a decision about this behavior.
Yeah, there's something right there. We're talking about school. There's self-regulation for children, how to be attuned with their emotions and how to settle themselves down.
Yeah.
That's something arguably they could be taught, I guess. And I wanted to ask you about that actually, because you've also got this very other important job, which is as a mum, as a mother, how you instill some of the life lessons that you've learned. Something I always think about with my children is you obviously don't want to expose them to the worst aspects of the world. You want to preserve them, protect them, but equally you want them to develop a level of resilience,
Mhm.
those kind of things. So even if it's just mild disappointment they experience from time to time, that is really low level
Yeah.
resilience they're forming. How do we do that in this world?
It's hard, isn't it?
It's really
As a
hard.
parent. And I think I've got a nearly 15-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I've, the ages are very different. And I think in those 15 years, I've obviously learned a huge amount. And I think one of the things with my eldest was that I, you know, I experienced trauma, I experienced pain because I'm human, and I didn't want him to experience that. So I then tried to take that away from him. Um, Whereas I think what you said, now I'm older, I realize actually it's really important that our kids experience things like boredom, discomfort, distress, because then they can learn the skills to manage them.
Mm, yes, because as you say, it's like even boredom, I think, is something that's not really appreciated. Because we're constantly able to distract ourselves these days, but even things like I often say meditation, a lot of the reason why people find that so difficult is because they're not used to just sitting there with their own thoughts. Is we constantly feel we have to be, and maybe that is that societal push that we have to be productive, that we have to be doing, like we have to be accomplishing things with that spare time. There's no time for just rest and just being. You don't have to be doing something, you can just be.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
no other expectations of yourself.
Yeah, and I definitely would say that's something that hugely comes up in my work a lot, this
Mm.
real resistance, and almost if it feels like a threat to the system that to rest and do nothing. Like if I'm, for example, someone might be, if I'm watching TV, I have to be on my phone. Like
Yeah,
almost like there's this double thing, or if I could listen to music, but I might as well just finish that email as well.
yeah, yeah,
That almost like that self-nurturance feels like it's last on the list.
yeah. That does come from that hustle drive, though. I mean, even to the point, I think, even back a few years ago, is I could, as I said, we live by the sea, so I love taking the dog for a walk. But just that, oh, if I'm taking for the dog for a walk, I listen to an audiobook, I can learn something as well. Like I can't just love the scenery and appreciate being in the moment with my dog. I've got to be learning as well, and I felt really proud of myself for that. And I think
Yeah.
about how those tendencies and those messages have lent themselves quite well to professionally and also like in fitness pursuits over the years. Like those tendencies are quite nurtured in those cultures, like bodybuilding, being meticulous with your food, hitting your protein target, preparing everything out of Tupperware and hitting all your exercise sessions, waking up at 4 a.m. and doing your cardio. It's all applauded. It's incredibly confusing to people that want to be healthier, and something I'm conscious to always talk about is the intent and the behavior, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's we want people to be healthier, we want them to engage in physical activity, learn to nourish their bodies, but then what's the drivers behind that?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's been some research, isn't there, around, I think for a lot of people that struggle, that shame is never a beneficial driving factor, and that actually we want people to achieve this from internal motivation.
Hmm.
And I think that's very difficult when you see people in aesthetic bodies that we associate with fitness getting this external validation, because I think almost that's sometimes that driving force. And I think that's probably a fear of a lot of people that I work with I say letting go or moving into their healthy body size and shape, that they wouldn't get that validation, and then who are they?
Yeah, yeah. again, I think that's a lot of the reason, the drivers why I got into it. And that transition, I don't know whether you found it. I know you stepped straight into powerlifting, but I found that transition quite difficult because that new social circle that you're with, that's what conversation revolves around: your next competition or your next photo shoot, or are you cutting, are you bulking, all these other phrases that are thrown around. So when you're transitioning away from that and your identity is locked so much into it, so it becomes an expectation of people, but it's self-imposed. You're in this prison that you've created yourself, and it's really difficult to move away from it.
Yeah. And I think very similar, like I love the fitness industry, it does wonderful things, but I think there are parts of the fitness industry can be like a bubble, and that can get a little bit toxic because you think if everything becomes so normalized, like tracking your calories becomes normal, training 6 days a week, training through injury, training if you're ill, all of those things become like normal human behaviors. Whereas, the fitness industry is so small in comparison with the general population that if you step outside of that industry, you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing tracking calories like this every single meal? And you realize that it's common, but it's not normal.
Yeah, it is. And as you say, it's the broader population, it isn't. But then, when people are, I think it's labeled as disordered quite often because we like to pathologize everything. We like to take the extreme view on it. But equally, like when people are in that space and it's removing from experience the other aspects of life, it probably is like the line. I guess. What would your opinion be of disordered to slipping into eating disorder? I guess on that, because I reflect back to my own experiences. I think possibly like I probably did have a little bit of an eating disorder at some point.
I think any behavior or any thinking pattern that prevents us from pursuing normal daily functioning would be classed as disordered. And I personally don't, I know the DSM-5 has strict parameters on what would be an eating disorder or disordered, but I think if a behavior or a group of behaviors are causing you distress, then that is a sign that you probably are in need of some support.
Yeah. I wonder how many people are numb to that though, because again, as you say, it's become so normalized, and people aren't necessarily striving for perfection. They're just trying to be on like a normal even keel with everyone else, but they feel like they're falling behind because of that is the new normal.
Yeah. And then it does. I mean, I would probably say I stepped out of the fitness industry, like being within it, and I'm probably like sitting on the edge of it. Maybe 5-6 years ago. I was still like personal training throughout lockdown and things like that. But I wouldn't say I involved myself in like the events and things like that anymore. And I think it does take time to create something different because you're so involved within a community, and then you don't have that anymore. What are you part
of? Was that a conscious thing to step away? It just naturally happened for you?
It just happened really, really naturally as other aspects of my life grew.
Yeah. Now setting up the home farm.
Yes. Yeah, I remember this is taking a lot of time.
Yeah, but it does sound like you made a conscious step away from making, I guess, work a priority. At
Yeah,
least
100%. I
enjoy
think,
the daily from now.
yeah, and I just put in, I guess, professional and personal boundaries that support me to have time. So, for example, in the past, I may have always got up, got all my work done and out the way, and then allowed myself to relax or play or whatever it was. But now it's very much, you know, the aspects of work that I'm lucky enough to do whenever, I'll just do them whenever.
Yeah.
And, but actually getting up to walk the dogs is more important, and making cookies with my son is more important. And I have set times that I work with clients, but then everything around that, I know it gets done, and it's never a hassle. And if things like, the things that fall off the list are things like social media, that I'm like, oh, it would be nice if I've got time to do that, I'll do it. But it's not a priority over like making my vegetable beds.
Yeah, I love that. I guess Atticus allows you to do that as well. He's got to come along for the ride, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So he, in terms of making the vegetable beds.
Yeah, well, and baking cookies and anything,
Oh,
the jobs you're trying to do.
oh
Because
yeah.
they're trying to undo everything as well, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he is heavily involved in everything, makes everything 10 times probably slower, but that's not a bad thing, and 10 times more fun.
Yeah. Yes, it's so funny how they can be equally the most challenging but the joyful thing ever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, talking back to that self-regulation, I think that's been the most important thing that I've ever learned as a parent.
Mm,
Little kids don't have capacity to be able to regulate, and actually our role as parents is to support them and to be the grounded,
yeah.
um that they know that they can have a paddy, and then we're still just going to be the same, there with our arms open.
Yeah, I have to remind myself at the moment of that.
Yes.
Jackson's going through a very boisterous, mischievous phase. So
Bless
he's
her.
gone to a very strong-willed. He likes to climb. I don't know whether that is from an evolutionary sort of just programming into boys. I caught him with keys, probably a centimetre away from sticking it in the plug socket the other day. Don't even know where he got the keys from. He quite likes to switch the Wi-Fi box off, but whilst making eye contact with you mischievously.
Yes.
There's something about boys, they like mischief, they like climbing, he
Yeah.
loves cars. I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's something we've pushed onto him, whereas Mila can happily sit there, she could do her colouring in, she's quite gentle, quite, I don't know whether that motherly thing comes in quite young.
Yeah. Or whether it is a genetic predisposition, whether it is like
Mm.
patriarchal growth activity, and we unconsciously pass it on.
Yeah, do you think we unconsciously treat them different? I don't know.
I've only got boys, so I think something that myself and my husband, became really conscious of was, as we've learned more about it, is that toxic masculinity.
Mm.
In saying thing, you just hear it said, don't you? Come on, boys don't cry.
Yeah,
Those type of things. We're super conscious not to say that. We want them to feel able to feel safe to feel the whole spectrum of human emotion.
yeah. I do feel, I don't know whether it's more pressure. I don't know whether it's but my awareness of things and how I've grown up as a man, but I do feel I don't know whether it's a more important job, but it's quite important to do a good job with boys.
Mm.
And I am aware of that with Jax and
Yeah.
you know the messages he'll be exposed to because not that I'm ever going to get the violins out for men. It's a bit of a weird time for men in terms of being pushed and pulled certain ways and moving away from that previous narrative, that stoic, stiff upper lip, just crack on with it, to being something a little bit more open. I think a lot of men struggle with that because it's not common to them. It's
Yeah.
something that's almost being demanded of them, but
Yes.
is very alien to them. So I think they want to. There is willing there, but equally, there's maybe not space to get things wrong. I think sometimes with how the narrative and the discussion around it is it can all be quite unforgiving to get things wrong as a man, but even when you're trying to learn sometimes. I've been accused of mansplaining a couple of times, for example, where discussions about men and adding something to it. It's like, oh, here's the man. I've come off social media recently, but on Threads, I can't remember what I was talking about, but someone I've never connected with said, "Oh, you're one of those hashtag not all men." So where has
Where
that
did
come
it
from?
come from? Oh,
I'd like to
gee.
think I'm not all men, but I would never say that. And equally, I'd never say I was mansplaining anything. But if you're having conversations about men and you're opening up the conversation to them, they should be part of that as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I wonder whether, and this is just a curious thought, whether obviously women fought for their rights and a sense of equality, and we went through that where we were the caregivers, and then we also had this massive opportunity and this amazing opportunity to get into the workplace to vote, and we became, there was that struggle to manage it all, and this then expectation to be the caregiver but also to bring income in because we could do it, and that phrase of superwoman coming in. I wonder whether now a similar thing is happening to men in terms of, hey, you should still look a certain way and you should still look strong and be able to do XYZ and be the main breadwinner. Oh, but also we want you to be able to be emotive with us. And actually it's that balance of trying to be everything, which is sometimes almost impossible.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I've never thought of it that way. I was talking to Shannon Beer about. She was telling me about some research that into since like feminism and the discussion around the patriarchy has been brought more to the forefront of people's attention for all the right reasons, there's been this right, well, whether it's coincidental, there's a whole causation correlation thing, but this rise in body image standards in men, where
Yeah.
they've like doubled down in physically embodying a certain look. And we've seen it with productivity hacking and aspirations of wealth and showboating with material items. I don't know whether that is just that they are tired, or whether some men feel threatened because of that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and almost then it pushes them more into, I guess, their masculinity. Or I just think that's how, the negative impacts of the patriarchy on men as well. I think a lot of people think patriarchy is men versus women, whereas
Yeah,
actually it's men and women versus a system.
yeah. Because
I
if
don't.
you're a modern day man, I like to think you don't benefit from the patriarchy either, really.
No, no, absolutely not. And those feelings of, if your female partner is earning more money than you, that for obvious reasons shouldn't make a man feel bad, but it does, and that is the impact of patriarchy.
Yeah, totally. And that whole, you mentioned it specifically there, the whole care provider thing. I like to think I am quite hands on with the kids, but I've always, whether it's my own experiences, I think the narrative around men is to be the provider from a financial standpoint, but also what about the care provider as well? We don't tend to think about it from that point of view. I think that's quite important. I think
Yeah,
that was another one of those things I might have mentioned on social media, and someone said to me, "Get a job, mate." But that's often from how men talk about it, whether it's a joke or not. It's that
yeah,
imposes those belief systems around certain gender roles.
yeah. I do think with the movement of like split maternity paternity, I think that supports things a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think, was it Aviva was one of the first to do. Well, they match it. I think you can take up to 6 months. Yeah, if you work. I don't think it's solely Aviva. I think there's quite a few companies, but yeah, certainly paternity, because I do know of men that wanted to take paternity leave that were refused it because it's not. I don't know whether it's considered as, but as in perhaps men wouldn't go to the lengths that a woman might having her maternity be
Yes.
refused. And that it's, you have to bring the money, or you're going to lose money, or you're going to take it unpaid, things like that.
Yeah.
Because that equality thing goes both ways, right?
Right.
And yeah,
100%. Yeah. And offering a man what is it, 2 weeks paid leave they're generally allowed.
I think generally, but I think it depends on kind of the industry.
Yeah.
If it's more classic kind of archetype,
Yeah.
these are bloke-led industries, is it wouldn't even be a conversation. I say that my friend, he works in, I don't know, job role. I'm gonna butcher it. I'm gonna say piping. They lay gas piping.
Okay.
I don't know what he's called, but when his son was born, he was refused
Wow.
paternity pay. Yeah. Or leave, not even pay, just leave, full stop. And if you wanted to take leave, it had to be holiday, and it had to be around key projects they were having at that time as well. Uh,
Yeah.
and
And
actually,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I could probably talk about it now because it's even Rosa, when, I mean, Mila didn't, we were trying to conceive with Mila for a little while when she was in her old previous job, and she transferred job, and she was 2 weeks shy of her 6 month probationary period. And it was, well, I mean, at her interview, her then manager said to her, "Have you got any kids? Are you planning on having any kids?" And then said, "Oh, fuck, I'm not allowed to ask you that." That was in the interview.
Yeah.
And then he was the one that also refused her maternity pay because she wasn't past her probationary period when she fell pregnant. So we didn't get any maternity when I'm self-employed. So it was juggling the two.
Incredibly difficult. And I think it is really hard for businesses, because the government aren't supporting businesses in an adequate way to support people to have children.
Mm, yeah,
And because I'm the same as you. I'm self-employed, so I think with Atticus I got like £600 a month.
yeah. It's like
Uh,
statutory, isn't it? Just
that's
whatever that is.
true.
I
So
don't know what that is now.
unless you're working in a big corporation and there's enough staff to take on that role, that business then has to employ someone else, and they then have to pay for any top up to that. So
Yeah,
it is an expense. and I'm not saying in any way that that's a reason why women shouldn't be offered opportunities.
Mm.
But again, I don't blame the businesses. I blame higher up.
Yeah, yeah, the whole culture, the societal standards, the infrastructure isn't there to support working parents, full stop, I don't think. I mean, you look at childcare fees.
Yeah.
You know, we've recently moved Jack's, but his previous nursery was like £83 a day.
Yeah.
I'm Essex, I'm not central London.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what
That's the
pay
same
in
as
central.
Brighton was.
Yeah, I don't know what people pay in central London, but you know, essentially I do understand why one parent may choose not to work at all. For the extra £50 they might get, they might just say, oh, I just want to spend time with my child, you know,
Yeah.
whichever parent that is. And I wonder on that, you know, we're talking about how the narrative has changed slightly for men, is this whole message around women, and you can have it all, you can do it all. What do you think of that?
I used to think it was super empowering, like a feminist act that, I can do it. I was a solo mum. I had my first son when I was 18. I went to uni. I did these sporting achievements, and I thought, you know what, if I can do it, so can, like, what's the excuse? Why can't everyone? And again, I think that was that belief system. But I was also super exhausted, burnt out, probably still recovering from trauma in my teens, and not really enjoying life. And I think, that message is, I think it can be toxic. I think when I was thinking, about my beliefs, worked really hard on my beliefs around like stay-at-home mums and working mums, and like why I felt differently between the two. And having been more of a stay-at-home mum with my second, for me, coming to work is a break. Like, I feel like being a stay-at-home mum is one of the most challenging, wonderful but challenging things in the world. And I think I've come to learn more about feminist theory, and I understand more that actually feminism is about choice. I can make a feminist choice. For me, could be to choose to be a stay-at-home mum if that's what I wanted to do. But me trying to do it all and be, a perfect mom, to, run a business and working in all hours under the sun and probably study and do something else, actually I'm spreading myself too thin and no one's getting the best of me.
Mm.
So I
Yeah,
think
you're not even getting the best of you as well. Like, yeah, I
I
totally
think you
think.
have to make choices.
Yeah, because I wonder that now, especially with you mentioning that about men, because I do think, no, I don't think there's pressure, but I think, you know, I want to be
Mm,
part of my children's life a little bit more. I'm very fortunate I can do that. I can juggle work around school runs. I can take a day off a week with Jax and just have a daddy Jax day. And that's quite a nice thing to do. But equally, that does come with, I don't want to say sacrifice, just compromise, because that means for work, if I was employed, which I'm not, I don't think I'm employable now, but I don't think I could go back. Like, I've been self-employed for 14 years now, and I just think, even though you've got the financial security and the appeal of that, of being employed, is, I just wonder what the quality of life is, because you can do it all. It's just, what is the quality of life for you or anyone else around you? You can tick all
yeah,
those boxes, but no one's getting anything really. Again, you're just back in survival mode, aren't you? You're
yeah,
not thriving as a person. And I've got friends, they will leave for work at 6 o'clock in the morning, they'll get home at 8 o'clock in the evening, and then when it comes to the weekend, because they're so fried from work, they want to go play
yeah.
golf all day, but they might have two or three children at home. And again, it's not for me to judge, but I just think it's so incredibly difficult to have it all, and that is the message for everyone now, is you can have it all.
And I think you get so stuck, don't you, into, if you are earning a pretty good wage within an employed job, you then get the house and the mortgage, and then you're stuck. You feel a little bit stuck because you might not want to carry on that job where you have to get up at 6 a.m., but you can't get out of it
Yeah,
because you've now got a family.
yeah.
And actually then starting something up from scratch, you're never going to be meeting those financial needs as early on.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? I find even people that I know that were in the city full time pre-pandemic, they've got used to life without doing that now. And obviously with the cost of living and everything else. And financially, they're kind of at loggerheads with their bosses now, because I can understand it from the business standpoint. If you're paying a London waiting wage, that is essentially what you get that London waiting wage for. So the expectation is that you eventually come back to the office. But people have, molded their lives around this new way of being. We're incredibly adaptable, aren't we, as humans? And they've got used to that.
Yeah. And from the research I've read, the productivity hasn't decreased.
No, no, it's not. But again, it's part of that culture, isn't it? It's that societal, this is how we've always done things. This is how we should. I mean, you know, Rosa again, previously, she was told that she couldn't work from home.
Wow. Okay.
So her job didn't lend itself to working at home until the pandemic, and it was forced and
Yeah.
actually that much more productive. But even with those metrics, because they pay for properties elsewhere, is the expectation is still that you do it as it always has been done, even though that people were using Zoom or they were using Teams or whatever it was. Is I hear accounts of people still having to go, you know, oh, I have to go to a meeting in Leeds today, but it's only
Yeah.
one meeting and then I'm coming back. It's like, well, surely if the pandemic has opened our eyes to anything, just can't we do that honestly? Oh no, no, it has to be done in person. I do
Yeah.
get some of it, but you know, equally, I think that some people just haven't learned anything from that.
Yeah, yeah. And I, like you said, I 100% get that there is such value in in-person meetings that you can't get through a screen. And also you have to take in like the all the other things into account, don't you? I think if you're worried about the environment, do I really need to be driving up to Leeds, jumping on the train, those type of things as well? I think it's about stepping out and just seeing a bigger picture from time to time.
Yeah. I guess all we can, you know, it's very difficult not to compare your circumstances to those around you. And again, something that social media is great for connecting people, but exacerbates all those comparisons you naturally have. So
Yeah.
even I find knowing better is when you are trying to live a little bit of a simpler existence, is that allure to, oh, well, maybe if like I was doing a little bit more, then that could afford like better experiences as a family. But actually, you know, there's the simple things like, as I said, walking the dog, you know, taking my daughter to school, having that day a week off is there's always going to be more, but this is my, whereas my narrative that I tell myself is there's always more money to be made, but there's not necessarily more time available to us,
Yeah.
especially when they're younger as well.
Yeah. And is it a sacrifice that we're willing to make? And, you know, would I rather make more money or have more time with my children? And
Mm.
for me personally, I'm not willing to make the sacrifice to give up that time with my children.
Yeah.
But you know, that's my personal opinion. And I know that that doesn't fit with everyone's.
Mm.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm hugely conscious of your time because I know you're a busy person and I really appreciate you. You know, I really appreciate the chat. Just in case anyone wanted, we don't know you've spoken about what you do, just in case no one knew what you do. If they did want to find out more from you or about you, Rachel, and everything that you offer, where would they go? Where's best for them to go?
So our website is thenurturecircle.com.
Oh, you're
Uh,
an owl, aren't you? I remember now. You're an owl
yes.
collective.
And I am on Instagram as dietitian.rachelhobbs.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to mention? Plug? You have a podcast as well, don't you?
We do. We've just started a new podcast, actually,
Mm.
myself and an amazing coach that I get to work with called Corey. It's just called the Nurture Circle podcast, and we talk about all things, yeah, from self-worth, feminism, a lot of body image, disordered eating stuff. Yeah, so have a listen.
Excellent. Thank you so much again. And if anyone has enjoyed this, please do share it on socials. I'm not on socials this month, but I'm still going to release these episodes. But I've just decided to have a month off of everything just because I never have. I
Have you
thought
not?
I've never had a total month off, as in deleted everything off my phone and just I'm just going to separate myself entirely from it. So that's what I'm going to do this month.
I did read a really interesting blog about someone that used to use them a lot and then took a year off.
Oh wow.
And he basically wrote, it was a really interesting experience, but he wouldn't do it again for a full year because he felt like he missed out on like updates from his friends and
Mm,
just being involved in some of those things, which I thought was really interesting and gave kind of a balanced
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, I just in terms of like what it's going to lend itself to, just being a bit more productive, reading a
Yeah.
bit more, spending a bit more time with the family, being present, not that constant pull to grab my phone and things like that. I noticed that was creeping in, but yeah, we shall see.
Yes. Oh,
You
well,
might
enjoy
see me
it.
on in 2 weeks. You might see me back on. No, you won't. But yeah, thanks again.
No, thank you so much for inviting